Hey friends, we are live and in color. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to my little space of the internet. My name is Vanessa Fernandez, and I'm the founder of the Enneagram Workshop, which is where you find yourself right now. And I am in the middle of a series called 10 Days, 10 Ways, 10 Ways the Enneagram Makes Your Life Better. Because here at the Enneagram Workshop, that's what we're all about. Yes, learning the Enneagram, but also putting it to work so that it makes our lives better. So if you're here, give me a wave, give me a heart, give me something. Let me know you're alive and awake. It's early. I mean, East Coast time, I guess it's not too bad. It's about 9:30 here on the East Coast, but still, it's an early morning. So I love seeing everybody. Hey, from Canada. So good to have you guys here. Hope you've enjoyed the series so far. This is day 6. I'm like so excited that you guys have been hanging with me for the last couple of trainings. And today I'm going to talk about, this is kind of the third installment of this little mini series in the middle of this series about bringing up your repressed center. So let me back up a little bit and let you know what I'm talking about that repressed center. So in the Enneagram, we've got a couple of divisions, a couple of smaller groups within the group of 9. And I kind of just did a little visual for you guys because I'm a visual person. And there's lots of different groupings within the Enneagram, but the two most common are triads and stances. And triads, we've got the heart, the head, and the body. And each of these types share a dominant center of intelligence. So everyone in the heart triad is feeling dominant. Everyone in the head triad is thinking dominant. And everyone in the body triad is doing dominant. So everyone in the triads, what they have in common is their dominant center of intelligence. The other grouping that we have are stances. And we have aggressive, dependent, and withdrawing stances. And everyone in these groups have in common their repressed center of intelligence. So the triads, it's your dominant center of intelligence that you have in common with everybody else. And the stances, it's your repressed center of intelligence that you have in common with everyone else. So the aggressive stance numbers 3, 7s, and 8s are all feeling repressed or heart repressed. The dependent stance numbers 1s, 2s, and 6s are all thinking repressed or head repressed. And then the withdrawing types 4, 5, and 9 are all doing repressed or body repressed. So they maybe have different dominant centers of intelligence, but they all share the repressed center of intelligence. I don't have time to get into it today, but you may notice that some of the numbers, 3s, for example, are both feeling dominant and feeling repressed. 6s are thinking dominant and thinking repressed, and 9s are doing dominant and doing repressed. That's another topic for another day. So fascinating. I mean, I'm a 3, so it's especially fascinating to me, but I think it's just one of those really cool things about the Enneagram. But for today, we're just going to talk about, we're actually going to focus on dependent stance. So I'm talking to you 1s, 2s, and 6s. And we're going to talk about how you can re-engage with productive thinking. Because if you're thinking repressed, let me just define that term. It doesn't mean you don't think, because you do. You think a lot, you think all day. But is the thinking productive? Is the thinking, are you really engaged in productive thinking? Or is it internal racket? How great of a phrase is that? I just read that the other day as I was doing some research deeper into thinking repressed types. Internal racket. So what that means is your thinking doesn't move you forward, but it keeps you stuck. It keeps you kind of going around and around. It keeps you second guessing. So if your thinking keeps you stuck and second guessing, it's not productive, because productive thinking allows you to go from one idea to the next, allows you to evaluate it objectively, and allows you to come to a conclusion. But if you are types 1, 2, and 6, chances are, unless you've done some good work, which you may have done, and that's awesome, but unless you've done some good work, chances are, especially when you are maybe not as healthy as you would like to be, your thinking spins you around in circles. It doesn't move you forward, and therefore it's unproductive thinking. So what I want to talk to you today is just give you a few ways that you can bring up your repressed center or re-engage with productive thinking. So the first thing that you can do as a dependent type is to pull away from other people and connect deeper with your own internal voice. So dependent types have this internal racket, as one of my favorite phrases now. You're going to hear me say it all the time. They have that internal racket because they are oriented to the actions of others, and therefore the actions and the voices and the intentions and even the emotions of others, depending on which one of the three dependent types you are, they start to trickle in. They start to infiltrate. They start to become a part of your own internal monologue, and it makes it very noisy. It makes it very difficult to discern, okay, how much of this is what I'm picking up from them, and how much of this is my own internal voice, and how much of this is truth, and how much of this is speculation. Because as I've mentioned in some of my previous trainings, that dependent types can tend to read into things. Dependent types can tend to have a conversation and read so deeply into things that what they heard was maybe not even what was actually spoken about in the conversation. And so when you have so much orientation to the actions of others, and you're reading into things and creating a whole other imagined monologue, that's a lot of voices inside your head. And that's hard to tease out which ones are yours and which ones are truth and which ones can actually move you forward so you're not stuck in that internal racket and not being able to move forward. So the first thing you need to do is pull away from other people and practice get a meditative practice going. This is similar to my advice for the aggressive types, but for different reasons. And it's going to look a little different for you if you're in a dependent stance. So pulling away from other people means literally don't do this at a coffee shop. Don't do this with your kids, even in the same house, even if you're in a different room. There's just something about dependent types that they can either feel, sense, even like type ones, they're the body in the body triad. They can just feel in their body if there's someone in the house who's not doing well, or if you're a type 2 and you have that feeling dominance, you can feel through your emotions, and those feelers can go through walls sometimes. So even if you're in a home with lots of people and you're in a room by yourself, I mean, maybe that'll be good enough, but I would suggest try and get as far away from other people as you possibly can, only because it's just hard to shut off those instincts that you have. Those instincts to feel everyone else's feelings, those instincts to be oriented to the actions of others. It happens without intent. And so it's really hard to shut that off. So if you can get into nature, would actually be ideal for dependent types. Get completely away from other people. Sit and have a meditative practice where you are listening for your own internal voice, and you are becoming cognizant of your thoughts. So while aggressive types are sitting in silence to allow their emotions to rise up, dependent types, I want you to really shift your intention to your thought process and to observe your thoughts without judgment. That's a key part of meditative practice and of reconnecting with yourself, is not allowing yourself to judge the thoughts that are coming into your mind. One of my favorite phrases when I do this is, "That's interesting." Whenever I have a thought, maybe it's a thought that I am a little embarrassed that I had, instead of judging that thought, I simply tell myself, "That's interesting." And I let it go. And then I let the next thought come. I observe it, I connect with it, and I simply say, "That's interesting." And I let it go. And this is what allows me to not have a judgment on my thoughts, and judgment will shut your body down and shut your mind down from continuing with this practice. Because judgment is not comfortable. Judgment is not freedom giving. So if you sit and try and meditate, and as soon as your thoughts come up, you start judging them, it's going to shut it down, and you're going to have a very lonely meditative time, because you're going to sit there with no thoughts, because your mind is going to be like, all right, if you're going to judge me, you can just sit there in silence. I'm not going to send you any more resources to be judging against. So it's so important to make sure that you simply, whatever phrase works for you, for me, it just simply says, "That's interesting." I'm feeling this way. I'm thinking these thoughts. That's interesting. And I'm just observing them. Doing this, especially if it's around, a lot of times dependent types may struggle with making decisions or with relationships, being able to think clearly around relationships. And so if you can even meditate and have it focused on a specific relationship or on a specific problem or on a specific issue, and just allow yourself to start to clear what exactly am I thinking in regards to this situation. And then that's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. Feel free to have a notebook by you if you want to take some notes, if you want to be able to see what is in your brain. And so this is actually, even whether you do meditative practice or not, this is the second tip that I give you to engage with your thoughts, is to write them down, to get them out of here and get them in here, because in here is that internal racket. When you get them out here, you have kind of like grabbed it, wrangled it, and put it in a cage, put it in a space that is black and white, that you can see clearly what you are thinking in regards to a certain situation. And when you do this, it will just automatically give you some more clarity. It will help you to see where maybe your thinking is not truthful thinking, because a lot of times when it's in here, it can jump into our hearts real quick and we just feel like, oh my gosh, those thoughts are real. Those thoughts are real. When we put them here, we start to see, oh, wait a minute. That's not real. That's not true. That's not right. And we can engage that fallacy with truth. But take notes first. Don't judge them yet. And then the last thing I would encourage you to do if you're a dependent type, after you've gotten away, you can't do this before you've gotten away, okay? Because I know you dependent types love collaborative growth and collaborative learning, and you love to grow together with other people, and you want other people to help you in your growth process, and that's amazing. But you're not allowed to engage with other people in this process until you have taken time by yourself to connect with your own internal voice, because that is a huge part of bringing up your repressed center of not being thinking dominant. So after you've listened to your own voice, then put it down in a notebook, and finally engage with other people. Allow others who maybe are thinking dominant. Maybe you have a friend who is just very logical, who is very thoughtful, who is very careful about how they think through things. This is a great moment to bring them in and to allow them to almost, when you do math and your teacher tells you to like, show me the answer or show me the process. So rather than just doing it in your head and saying, oh, the answer is 743, the teacher wants you to show how you got there, every step of the math problem along the way. That would be so helpful for you to ask your thinking dominant friends, hey, this is what's in my head. This is the internal racket. This is all of the jumble mumbo mess that I have in my head. Can you show me the math of how you would process through this, all of this data, all of this craziness that's in my brain? Show me how you productively think through this. And then allow your friend to do that. Now, don't take their input as a judgment on you, because once again, dependent types, you do have to be really careful that you are oriented to the actions of others. And sometimes the actions of others are not speaking to you. Sometimes if they are evaluating your thoughts, they're not trying to pass judgment on you. So try and disconnect whatever your friend who's trying to help you think through things, try and disconnect that from how they think of you and simply benefit from their incredible way that they think through things. And then practice it. Use their process, use their math equation to be able to then on your own work through the internal racket that's going on in your brain. Okay, so does that make sense? I'd love to take any questions. If you have any questions about dependent stance and being thinking repressed, if there's anything that doesn't make sense to you, feel free to shoot me a question right now. So I've been talking a little bit about this new training experience that I've created called Enneagram for Individuals. So there's a lot of great information in there on stances. It's actually probably my favorite module that I've done, and especially about how each center is repressed in their center of intelligence, what that even looks like. Because sometimes it's confusing to understand, well, I think all the time. What are you talking about? I'm thinking repressed. And so I just go through and really tease out for you why that is. All right. I don't see any questions. So that's great. I guess I'm just such an amazing teacher that you guys have any questions. If you do have questions, you can always comment on these videos after the fact if you're watching the recording, and I will try and answer them in a timely manner. Thanks so much for being with me. Tomorrow I will be back once again to talk some more about the Enneagram. And yeah, love you guys. I will see you later. Have a great, what day is this? Thursday. Have a great Thursday.